alert you all to the fact that we are recording the sessions, and that is so others who might have had to miss one of the sessions can catch up, or if there's something you wanted to double check, you could go to the recording and go back to that spot and have a look at it. And these recordings will be available in Moodle, which we'll take you through shortly. So let me introduce Kathy. Kathy DeCoris is the training manager at Safe System Solutions and has quite a history in education in technical areas of transport and roads in terms of coordinating, managing and designing courses as well. So Kathy is the moderator, which means that anything you need in terms of the logistics and management of the course, Kathy is your go-to. So Kathy, I might hand over to you to just talk through a couple of things here.
Thank you, Ken, and yes, hello, thank you for the welcome, and thanks everyone for tuning in. So far so good. We don't seem to have any technical issues apart from your display there, Ken, but I'll leave you to sort that one out. So on your very tiny screen there, it basically, as Ken said, if you've got any issues, please get in touch with me. You can call me, text me, email me, whatever works best. Now, in the Zoom webinar, you can chat using the chat box. So you can chat both to just panelists, which will be Ken and myself, or you can chat to all panelists and attendees. So if you want to ask a question and you don't want to share that with everyone, you can just ask it to all panelists, or otherwise you can share any comments or questions with all attendees as well, which means everyone else in the group will see that. If you do want to speak verbally, you can do that. So just hit the raise your hand button, and basically I can unmute you from there and you can ask your question or make a comment verbally as well. And if the chat's not working for you for any reason, there's also a Q&A function. So I'll monitor all of those throughout the session. If for any reason you might lose internet or something, or the Zoom drops out or something like that, best thing to do is to shut it down, restart, rejoin. Otherwise you can dial in and the dial-in numbers are there as well. But again, get in touch with me at any stage.
Thanks, Kathy. And yeah, so there's lots of ability for you to interact. We love the questions coming in or comments or the like, and Kathy feeds those to me as we go. So just, you know, jot it into the chat or the Q&A as we're going along. Don't wait for a pause or anything like that because we'll sort of collect them as we're going. Feel free to comment or send links or whatever you think would be good for that interaction. But yeah, do utilize that raise hand if you really want to chat about something, and we will in some of the later sessions use that or you know, ask for people to unmute themselves and have a chat with us about something. So myself, there I am without my moustache. I'm the principal engineer at Safe System Solutions. We are a specialist road safety engineering consultancy. We're based in Melbourne, but we work across Australia and New Zealand. And we're all about, designing, managing roads to get us as close to the elimination of death and serious injury as possible. I've popped there the QR code for my LinkedIn, which is QR codes are now standard practice with COVID safe signing in and the like. So you can hobby your phone camera over that. The reason I want to do that is because we can only cover a certain amount in this course, and the field of road safety engineering is so big and broad that the conversation just continues, and we do a lot of posting of different topics and on LinkedIn, and it's good to share those and we can have that conversation. And it's also a good way to keep an updated address book. So, you know, if you did have a question about a safe system assessment and you couldn't find that, the slide with my details on it, you could just go to LinkedIn and ask me that question, and I can get back to you. So that's there, and I keep it in the bottom of the slides here if you want to connect. But please connect, and we can continue the conversation. Moodle is our learning management system, and I'll get Kathy, you can again just talk people through how we use that.
Thanks, Ken, and thanks to everyone who's jumped in and joined the course. Basically, all the details are available to you electronically through Moodle. So the presentation slides, the quizzes at the end of each of these live sessions, there'll be a short multiple choice quiz for you to do, a couple of assignments that you've got, and one of them being your safe system assessment that we give you a site for. So everything is nice and neatly housed in the course in Moodle. And many of you've been able to jump on and put in your intro message, which is great. Again, if you're having any trouble, please get in touch with me on that one. But otherwise, I think we're pretty good to go. Don't be afraid to ask questions about anything along the way.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. And just reiterating there that you've got some little quizzes which you shouldn't find too hard if you're engaged in the content of each of the sessions, and those assignments, one being a fairly short one, but then the actual safe system assessment does take a little bit more time, but I think you'll find it interesting and hopefully quite enjoyable, as many of your colleagues did late last year. In order to sort of keep you engaged, there's a couple of things that we do. One is Wally the Wombat, and you can see Wally there. Wally's a warning sign of a wombat, Wally the Wombat, and Wally will appear randomly on slides during each session. And you've just got to keep a track of how many times Wally appears in each session. And so get a scrap of paper, or I think there was an official Wally counting sheet provided. You could use that. But just keep a track of every time you see Wally. And then in that quiz we spoke about in Moodle after each session, one of the questions is, how many times did Wally appear in the session? Now we give you a little bit of tolerance either side in case, I don't know, you dropped your coffee in your lap or something and you were dealing with that when Wally appeared, but they're fairly easy to see if you're engaged. We also have different little polls, quizzes, or I'll ask questions where I expect you to be writing comments back or answering questions back during the sessions. And we like to give out prizes. And Kathy is there in the prize pit. And so if you are the first to answer questions correctly, or you make a really good comment or the like, we will give you a prize. Have you got any example prizes there, Kathy? What do we got? Oh, it's socks. They're disappearing. Amazing. Disappearing socks. Yes, there you go. There's an example of a prize. Now, you might be saying to yourself, how do I get these prizes? Well, the end of if you successfully complete the course, you'll be emailed your certificate, but you'll also physically receive a hard copy of your certificate in the mail. And if you've happened to collect any prizes along the way through our journey, they will also come in that pack. Yep, another incentive to get involved. And there was some other random thing that appeared there, but anyway. So Wally the Wombat, keep account of that. That one's not included. Your Wally count is 0 at the moment. Now, I mentioned that you have to successfully complete the course. There is a benchmark that has been set, so it's not just about sitting here and getting through to the end. We actually require you to build some competency in safe system assessments. We ask that you attend at least 4 of the 5 live webinars. You're at one today, and if that's an understanding that you might have unavoidable things that you can't move, so you can catch up on the last one by viewing it. We need you to successfully complete all or satisfactorily complete all the tasks, and the satisfactory mark there is an 80% pass mark for all the quizzes and assignments. Now, don't get too concerned by that. It does sound like a fairly high pass mark, but we are here to ensure that you get over that hurdle. And I'm I'm confident you won't have too much trouble doing that. But if you do submit that first one and you don't do very well at all, it's probably a good opportunity to get in contact with us and organise some one-on-one chat about the topic, and we'll refine your learning there to ensure that you understand those things. You have 3 attempts at each one. So I'll pause there and see if anybody does want to type in a question or raise their hand to ask a question about how this course is running. We've got 5 live webinar modules, as was said there. I'll just check if my pen's actually working here. No, it's not. Here we go. Yes, there we go. 5 live webinars. There's 6 modules, but one of those modules is you actually doing the safe system assessment. So there's not an actual live webinar. We get you already, and then off you go out there to do that. You'll be asked to go out to a site close to you where there is a proposed road upgrade project of some description, and we've tried to use real ones, so they come with all their quirks or lack of information or deficiencies, but that's the real world, isn't it? So we've tried to use those. So you'll get that, you'll go out to your site, and then you'll prepare a fairly short report that we give you a template to use. So it's a real practical exercise, and from past participants, it's really seen as one of the sort of highlights to really put this into practice. So it doesn't look like any questions are coming in there, Kathy.
I think you're good to go, Ken.
Okay, well, let's get into it. So basically the way it works is I run through slides, I talk to them and pause along the way to get you to do quizzes or a little exercises or ask you questions. And Kathy jumps in occasionally as people are asking different questions in the chat or the Q&A or making comments, and feeds those to me. All right, let's get into it. So safe system assessments. Now, I know that quite a few of you are very experienced in the road safety field, or in the transport or traffic engineering field, or the technical fields of the management, design, operation of a road system. And so you might be scratching your head as to, well, what are these safe system assessment things? We know there's other checks and balances that happen during the development and design of any road project. So what's this one, and how does it fit in? So the first thing I wanted to do is just contextualize it for those who have been playing in this space for a while and know a few of these things. And the first thing I wanted to use there was road safety audits, because that's probably one of our most well-known independent assessments of a road project or a existing bit of road. We tend to gravitate to those. They've been around in Australia for about 25 to 30 years, and a lot of you probably either are road safety auditors or engage road safety auditors, and they're a really valuable process, and they continue to be a valuable process. I certainly do a lot of road safety auditing myself. I train road safety auditors in quite a few jurisdictions. And it's certainly going to continue on as an integral part of a transport project. The other thing that's important to remember, which is a really important injection of safety into a road transport project or an independent assessment of other features as well, is that design review. And there is overlap between the road safety audit and the design review, but there's certainly stuff in the design review which is not picked up in a road safety audit, and it, conformance with different standards, checking, drainage calculations and all those wonderful things. And that's another important process. There is overlap there, and there's stuff that a road safety audit does that will probably not come into a design review. And our safe system assessment, again, has overlapping parts. There is quite a bit of overlap between what you'd find in a road safety audit, what you'd report in a road safety audit, and a safe system assessment. But there are certainly things that a safe system assessment looks at, and reports on that are not covered in a road safety audit. And you can see there that there's a little bit of sort of design review stuff in there as well. Then we've got safety and design. So that's one to check, can this be built safely? Can it be managed safely? Can it be decommissioned safely? So that's another beast, another independent assessment in there. And then there's this sort of DDA compliance, the Disability Discrimination Act, checking the tactile ground surface indicators are in the right spot, the grades are right, and all of that sort of stuff. So there's quite a few of these independent assessments within road transport projects, and those are certainly embedded into your processes with any transport project at TMR. And so I just thought I'd start with that to show some of the overlap, but also show some of these areas that that are outside. And certainly one thing that I've found as I've been doing a lot of safe system assessing over the years is a lot of people say, well, we've done a road safety audit, so we don't need this safe system assessment. And well, you're covering off some of the stuff, but as you'll find out, there's a lot more to it. Remember to jump in with your questions as we go, but that was just a little context setting slide I wanted to put up first. But really, we're jumping now into module 1, and I've got quite a few things to cover before I ask you some questions. So by the end of this module, we want you to be able to list the principles and the elements or pillars of the safe system, determine kinetic energy thresholds for key crash types, explain the differences between traditional approaches to road safety and the safe system approach, cite best practice for behavioural change and vehicle interventions, and give reasons why speed is a critical element of the safe system. So there's a fair bit to cover there, and some of those you might think, oh, well, I know that, but I may give it a different slant to the way it's been presented to you in the past. And I'm also keen to hear your thoughts on some of these and gather that information. I'm going to be nice here and say, here's your first Wally. Wally count is 1. That's a nice obvious Wally there. They're all fairly obvious. Okay, the safe system. The safe system. This is a road safety philosophy, or actually a operational philosophy of a road network or transport system that we've committed to. We've committed to in state strategies or state policies, in national strategies, and in fact, even at a bigger picture level than that, and at a UN level, we committed to the implementation of the safe system. So we're in, TMR's in, absolutely committed to the implementation of the safe system. Australia's in, the federal government has made that commitment to the implementation of the safe system, and it is the philosophy that we will use to make our decisions around road safety. The question really becomes, what on earth is this, and what does that actually practically mean at an operational project sense? I mean, these are the real head-scratching things we have. But the safe system, is absolutely committed in your road safety policy. And if you haven't read that document or don't know that that document exists, it's something you should at least have a flick through, but you'll see squarely in there that you are actually required to do safe system assessments as part of your project. It's in there as organizational policy. I think that's a pretty good step by an organization, a road authority. And so I compliment you all on that. You're going to be the ones that are going to be charged with making that policy real and happen on the ground and in the projects. And so this is a great opportunity for you to understand what those commitments in that policy are. So let's talk about this thing, the safe system first, not safe system assessments as such, which is the focus of this course, but the safe system overarching. Now, the safe system is probably something that you've heard of, and you've probably got an idea in your head of what it means. And I'll I suppose, delve into some of that in more detail and probably maybe even challenge some of the thinking that you might have originally had. But here is one of the really early, in fact, this is probably one of the first, I think it is the first diagram of the idea of the safe system that was used in Australia. And the federal government committed to the implementation of the safe system a while back. In fact, what I'm going to do is give a prize to the person who first types into the chat the year that the federal government committed to the implementation of the safe system in our national strategy document. So have a guess. You can guess a few years if you want, but pop it into the chat and you'll be our first prize winner. So this diagram was floating around back in this year, and it was trying to represent this philosophy in a diagrammatic form that was easier to consume, I suppose. And so I'm going to take you through that because it gives you a window into the original thinking of the safe system. Have we got any guesses yet? I'm not seeing anybody having any guesses on a year.
Yeah, we've got a ton of guesses. 2005 was very popular, and I think 2005 was close.
Very close.
But I believe, if I remember correctly, is the correct answer 2004?
Yes.
It is. Well, it was Bart in with 2004.
Congratulations, first prize winner. And 2005, some people are pretty close on there because there was a lot more discussion and around that time on it because the commitment happened, and then it was, oh, what is this? How do we do it? So I'm almost tempted to give all those 2005 people prizes, but we're going to go with the 2004, the official answer. So this diagram sort of came about, and there was one thing that was added at the last minute on this diagram. So what we've got here is we've got the center of this diagram, and I'm going to draw on it. Hopefully this works. Yeah, we've got at the center of this diagram. Don't worry if you can't read it. We've got human tolerance to physical force. Right. The center of the safe system in this diagram is how much force can the body handle before it is seriously injured or killed. Right? Just biomechanical tolerances to human force. Human biomechanics, we call it. That was central to this. We need to understand that in order to create a system that is forgiving, but we'll get to that. Then it was saying that we've got these elements of the system that we can use to try to achieve this safe travel. And we've got the vehicles, we've got the roads and roadsides, and we've got the speeds. And that was it. Now, some of you are probably going, hang on, what about the drivers and the pedestrians and the cyclists, the people and their behavior? Isn't that something that is quite critical to this transport system? Well, the original safe system did not have anything else. And that was it. And it was basically saying, we are going to create a system that does not require alert and compliant behavior in order to stop death and serious injury. And the reason that that was being said is because we're dealing with humans in this system, and humans are operating this system, and humans fail a lot. I've made many mistakes already today. I'm sure you've made many mistakes already today. They've been very minor probably, and little things. However, we're constantly making mistakes as humans. It's part of being human. And so the system was trying to say, well, we need to acknowledge and design our system for humans rather than trying to make it so it is as a requirement that the humans are acting alert and compliant all of the time, because we know that that's just impossible for humans. At the very last minute, sort of, we're talking mid 2004 here, and all the documents are finalized, and there was just this pushback and saying, well, No, we need these alert and compliant road users. And so this little bit was chucked in right near the end before, ministers started signing things off. And to a lot of us at the time, we were like, that's okay, we've taken a massive step back here by adding that, because this is the get out clause now for people trying to operationalize this. Because it's the easiest thing to do in road safety to say, well, they weren't alert or they didn't comply with the road rules. And then say, well, they have to do that if we are going to expect to virtually eliminate death and serious injury. We need everybody to be alert and compliant. So we know that we're dealing with humans, and that's an impossibility. So we need to try to make this impenetrable system, which is what we were trying to do. Now, I acknowledge here that I'm talking big picture, blue sky, philosophical stuff. And in fact, today's whole module is around this sort of philosophical thinking. And it usually causes a lot of friction with people. And that's good. I'm excited by that, because I want to have these discussions. And you at the operational end in the regions are seeing things that I have no doubt are absolutely horrendous in terms of alertness and compliance, and are causing trauma to your community. And you get so angry at it. I mean, I spent much of my career in a region in the Victorian government, Vic Roads, and I did all the fatality reporting, all the black spot stuff, a lot of road safety auditing, development of infrastructure projects. And it is infuriating to see the behaviours out there on the road network that are causing death and serious injury to those people, but also other members of the community. And the natural reaction is to push back and say, that's their fault. They shouldn't do that. Now, what we need to try to do is elevate ourselves as a road authority and say that behaviour is something that happens within a society. And how can we alter our system around that? We do not condone it. We do not encourage it. But how can we create our system so when that sort of behaviour happens, it doesn't result in death or serious injury to those people or others in the community? Now, this is quite a shift in our road safety thinking, and it does take an elevated level of looking at a transport system and the way we operate it. So that was some of the early stuff there. Then we started to see evolutions of that diagram with different things. There's one of the diagrams. There's another one that got used. New South Wales likes that one. This is the one that Queensland currently uses, and it's a pretty good one. I like it. I like a lot of parts of it. I like the fact that it's still, we've got the human tolerance to crash impact or physical force right at the centre. Now, then we've got these words in here: work to prevent crashes that result in death or debilitating injury. I like that, and there's some real subtlety in that wording, because it does not say work to prevent all crashes, does it? Because that would be saying, work to make humans perfect, which we can't do, or work to completely automate the whole fleet very quickly and never let humans be involved in any of the decision-making tasks in transport, which would be awesome, but that's so far away in practical reality. But what it does say is work to prevent crashes that result in death and debilitating injury, which to a degree is an acknowledgement that we are going to accept crashes that don't result in death or debilitating injury, minor injury, property damage, all within the realms of acceptance within the safe system. Again, we don't want those from just a traffic engineering perspective and a management of a road system perspective. But what we are targeting is elimination of those crashes that result in death and debilitating injury. We've still got the same elements: the roads, the roadsides, the speed, the vehicles. The people have been added in here as one of the elements, or pillars, as some people call them. Right? So something that we can get some more benefit out of, but it's an absolute acknowledgement that humans are still going to make mistakes, and we need to start designing for that failure. And then around the outside, we've got some wonderful supporting features, some really good stuff. All of the things like our road rules and enforcement, the licensing system, education, innovation, monitoring management, all the data research and evidence-based decision-making in road safety. So important to the SAFE system. There is another element to the SAFE system. So one like these, and it's not actually sort of put into the Queensland diagram, but it's acknowledged as one of the elements of the SAFE system. And again, I'll give a prize to the person who can put that, what it is, in the chat. And it's not management or coordination or education or the things around the outside. It's a specific, I suppose, lever we have to pull in a similar way of these elements of the SAFE system. So if anybody can come up with that and pop it into the chat, they can win a prize as well. And Kathy, I'm not seeing anything in terms of the chat or anything, so it's all up to you, by the way.
Oh, they're saying horrible things about you, Ken. No, all good. Just waiting for some responses on that one. So another element of the SAFE system, a lesser spoken about element. Perhaps.
Well, interestingly, it's quite a spoken about element of the SAFE system in a lot of other countries, and especially developing countries or lower middle income countries have this as a much larger element of the SAFE system. But I dare say in a lot of the regional areas in Queensland, it's probably something that warrants quite a bit of attention. But it's different thinking. Anyway.
Good clue, I think you've given there, Ken. So a couple of guesses have come through, but we'll let it go a little bit longer. There was a question earlier when you spoke about compliant road users.
Yep.
The question is, isn't safer speed often dependent on compliant road users?
Yeah, great question. And I do have a short session on speed at the end of today to talk about that. But certainly I think there's a lot we can do in the other elements of the SAFE system apart from the people aspect to get safer speeds. So we can certainly, as many of you know, we can engineer the road environment to get changes in operational speed and vertical deflection, classic example. You put speed humps in an urban area, the speeds go down significantly, and it's very hard to not to speed even if you wanted to. Likewise, the vehicle interventions are amazing. The technology's there to speed limit cars to whatever we want, to the speed zone if we wanted. Is there a political will to do that? Probably not at this stage, but the vehicles can do that. So we've, just immediately there, you can see that other elements of the system can be levers for achieving that. But what it does actually really beautifully bring up, and well done to the person who said that, is the interaction between these elements of the system. They look very isolated, don't they? But the diagram should really sort of overlap there and there and there. I mean, it's a big intertwined, complex system, and they all interact very, very much. And actually, that's one of the reasons I always refer to them as elements of the SAFE system. Most people refer to them as pillars of the SAFE system. The speeds, the vehicles, the people, the roads and roadside, the pillars of the SAFE system. I say the elements of the SAFE system because I don't want anybody to conjure an image of their mind of these siloed areas that don't interact with each other, because it is a complex, intertwined system, and you can achieve these outcomes, and they will influence each other by using many of these levers. So I'll always say elements of the SAFE system for that particular reason.
Thank you, Ken. Look, we've had some excellent answers come in, but none I think that you're looking for, which is a shame because we were giving away a car for that one. But so you might have to tell everyone that fifth element.
The fifth element, the acknowledged fifth element of the SAFE system is post-crash care and emergency response. So how quickly and how efficiently we can get to injured parties in a road crash, how efficient and advanced is our medical system to treat them. And that's because you remember the diagram basically said lifelong or debilitating injuries, fatalities and debilitating injuries. There is, your golden hour rule, and when you talk to the trauma surgeons, they're very adamant that if they can get there in early intervention, they can make things that would be acquired brain injuries into lesser and much lesser injuries that people can have a full and healthy life with. They can do some wonderful things. So we acknowledge that as an element of the SAFE system. Yeah, the car, we're going to give away the car as a 5-star ANCAP safety rated car too. Anyway, keep answering your questions. Who knows what the next prize will be? This is another little diagram I love that came out of TMR, and it's just another representation of the SAFE system using those elements that feed in to crash forces, human tolerance, crash outcome, right? And that's to say we're going to, we've got this complex mix of things going on out there in our road network. And when an incident happens, we need to understand the forces. We need to check the forces against what the human body can handle. Then we know our crash outcome. And if the crash outcome is fatal or serious injury, like debilitating injury, we need to go back and look at these elements and say, hang on, we haven't got our system right. So crash forces, and look at it. This is straight out of your documentation. Look at it. It's the orange. It's the bright color. Crash force. Not saying how do we stop crashes, but saying what are the forces in these crashes, and that is one of the most fundamental changes between the way we've traditionally operated in terms of road safety and how we're moving in the SAFE system, is the acknowledgement of crash forces and human tolerance to physical force. So we're going to do everything we can to try to minimize crashes. We're not ignoring that, absolutely not. But we are just acknowledging that we need to design our system for humans. And they're fallible and they're going to make mistakes. And we need some fail-safe mechanisms. So when people fall asleep at the wheel, or when they do things that we don't condone, don't want them to do, like use their mobile phone, or have a few beers and get in the car, or have a few beers and stagger out onto the road. How is our system going to protect these people and others that are in that immediate area? And that's confronting, isn't it? Because you're saying, well, hang on a second, if these people can't behave themselves, why is it our responsibility to protect them? Well, the reason is you are managing a road network for society. And that is our responsibility. They have a responsibility as well to try to, do the best they can, but it does not void us of responsibility. And we need, if things go wrong, we need to go back and we need to look at the system and say, what can we change? What is within our control? So I wanted to, use a different analogy on this. And I want to get out of the transport field for a second, because we've grown up with roads. We've grown up, walking and then riding or whatever you're doing, and then driving around these networks, and then managing it, designing it, maintaining it, whatever your role is. And we've sort of developed in our mind a safety culture, the way that we think about safety and roads. But if we look at another industry and we try to say, well, what is their safety culture and how have they got there? I think it sort of opens up our mind to reassessing how we've established our thoughts on transport. So let's look at manufacturing. Let's look at widget production. I don't know what widgets they are. They're widgets. There was a time back there in the early days, and this is where the widget factory was actually a fairly open system. Because immediately when I say widget production, people just go, yeah, it's a closed system. There's so much freedom out there on the road network and people accessing it all the time. This is not a good comparison. But there was a time when it was a fairly open system into the manufacturing where they get people, get paid to clean the machines. As you can see in that photo, kids are in there cleaning machines or doing bits and pieces. They have quite fluid workforces. People, would go out and have, quite a few pints of ale or whatever it was before they came back for the afternoon shift. And it was a fairly open system. And, they were very much told, this is a dangerous machine, so watch out. And sometimes they even said, well, you can't, use that machine unless you've had the, a couple of hours of training with Bob over there before you use it and those sorts of things. And they were told and patted on the back and said, listen, this is dangerous, but you've got to be safe and it's up to you to protect yourself. And that's what we call a pathological safety culture. It is up to everybody to protect themselves the best they can. Been warned this is dangerous. It's your responsibility to be safe. This sort of safety culture elevates, and in the widget sort of one, it's as a few kids get killed in a machine, or an arm gets ripped off, or somebody gets backed over by the truck, or whatever it is. These problems are people try and solve them as they come up. So they see that happen, they go, that's not acceptable, and we should fix that. So it's sort of spot fixes as people get killed and seriously injured. Then there's an elevation from that, and this is usually where the economists come into it. And some, back in the day, some economist strolls in and says, I've had a look at your factory, your widget factory here, and I've noticed your production is down in these areas because of the people being machines being down for arms getting caught in them, and you're having to pay out money to families and funeral costs and those sorts of things, and so it's actually costing you money in your back pocket. So if you are actually able to retrofit these safety features to your machines and follow this operational practice, it's going to cost you £20,000, but you'll get £60,000 in extra widget production over this many years. And I've come up with this thing called a benefit cost ratio, and you get a benefit cost ratio of 3. So every pound you invest, you get £3 back in extra widget production. So it's a really good investment. And that's, then the factory owner said, oh, that sounds very good. We'll invest that, and off they go. And then it sort of elevates from there to this idea that safety sets the precondition for widget production, in terms of saying that we need an extremely high level of safety, and we will produce as many widgets as we can up to that level of safety. But that is dictating. And it's very accepted in occupational health and safety in factories and the like, an absolute 0 for death and serious injury, right? And people are like, yep, absolutely, right? And the safety culture is such that it says, if there is something that poses a potential death or serious injury, production stops, right? And they say, we have to fix that before we restart our widget production. And so we see the machines, and they have cutoff switches and guards and all sorts of things beyond simply the training of the people using the machines. and it's quite a sophisticated safety culture system in most of our factories in Australia, at least. Some of the rest of the world still has some work to do. But you can't stop there. You need to continually invest in maintaining that high level of safety, the culture in terms of the facilities, but also the people and the machines and the like. So that's sort of the safety culture in the widget production sense. But safety culture is safety culture across the board. So this applies equally to our road transport system in the design, the development, the delivery and the management of our transport system, our road system. But where do we sit? Where do we sit with our roads? And that's a fair question to ask, because it's not clear cut really for us, because there are bits that pop into all of this. And I would say pathological is a lot of pathological stuff going on, because we basically license people and we send them out and say, this is really dangerous and you gotta protect yourself here. We have environments where we've got kids and parents and intoxicated people, and we're saying it's up to you to protect yourself. You can't walk out on to the roads or these areas, and it's up to you. And that's pathological safety culture. Reactive, absolutely. Our whole black spot programs have been absolutely driven by reactive safety culture. Calculating, we've definitely got that as well. Our black spot programs integrate that into there, and we do also proactive calculation, certainly things like ANRAM or IRAP assessments and looking at risk reduction per dollar spent and those sort of things, which I'll take you a bit through later. I won't get bogged down in that. A little bit of proactive stuff, I would say. We do some proactive stuff in the road space, so I don't think we're void of any ability to do proactive things. It's just a little bit harder. The classic example of proactive for me are school speed zones, where if you took that as pathological safety culture of school speed zones, you'd simply say the kids need to learn not to go on the road. And then that's true. Was something we want to continue to do. But if you took then a reactive safety culture, it'd just be, well, we'll put some features where the kids are being killed. And if you went to a calculating, you'd pretty much do nothing, because there's not enough kids killed or seriously injured to make it a good economic decision due to travel time. These minor travel time issues multiplied by the vehicles per day through the area. Any economist would simply say that is not a good investment from a pure calculating sense, which is, immediately says to me we've got something wrong with the system if that's not a good investment. Maybe some of you are saying, well, the BCR system is fundamentally wrong because it's not taking into account the societal values of these sort of things. But anyway, that's a different debate to have. But it's proactive, isn't it? I mean, we didn't say any of that. We just said school speed zones across all schools, and it was a little easier in the negotiating with the community, because you had kids to use as your lever for implementing those, and nobody finds a good platform to stand on to restrict safety features for kids. So that's the safety culture stuff. Any questions coming in at this stage, Kathy?
Yes, thank you, Ken. When the system is made safer, won't motorists be less careful?
Yeah, it's a good question, and people have delved into trying to look into risk compensation. I mean, that's the theory of it. Risk compensation is what you're really dealing with. So if you make something safe, they take more risks, or concentrate less, or whatever it is, because it's a safe system, and then you get this back and forth. there's nothing really conclusive to say that that will happen overall as such, but there are isolated, areas to think about. I mean, I spent a lot of time in motorcycle safety infrastructure for motorcycle safety, and certainly have seen, operational speeds of motorcyclists increase as we make the surfaces better and we make the delineation better and seal shoulders and those sorts of things. So yeah, there's some of those elements in there. But the reality of the majority of our system is that humans are not inclined to want to be involved in an incident. And the relative severity of the incidents is a little bit harder to quantify for the individual. You're probably coming at it from a slightly skewed perspective with an understanding of some of the basics of road safety and how crashes come about and the severity of those crashes. But for the normal driver, leaving the road and hitting a road safety barrier is something that they will avoid just as much as leaving the road and hitting a culvert or potentially rolling over or hitting a tree or the like. So there may be isolated incidents of this, but on an overall perspective, we generally think that making the system safer is a good thing. But there are techniques we can use to try to keep engaging with the road user. And we can go through some of those in terms of audio tactile edge line and different other features as well to try to keep that engagement with them, which is one of the mechanisms for, not having them increase their risk by lack of alertness and these sort of things. Good question though. Was that it, Kathy?
Yep, that's all for the time being.
I think, is this where I want to put a quiz up?
I think so.
For some reason my quiz slide is not next, but anyway. All right, let's do a little poll. Now, I want to tell you all that you are not marked on this, right? This is just to make sure you're there and you're thinking about this stuff. And the second question, we haven't covered. We haven't covered this, so it's up to you to have a guess. You're not marked on this. In fact, we don't even know who you who is answering what. So just have a guess at it, and it should have popped up on your screen if everything's working.
That's right, Ken. You should have a pop-up box, and at least one person does because someone's answered both questions. So 2 questions, and just submit your answer. We'll keep it open for about another minute or so. And just wanted to alert you, Ken, there was another comment that came through when you talked about post-crash care. And James has referred to it as the golden hour, and says could be perhaps why there's a disproportionate number of fatalities in rural areas. Congestion in southeast Queensland means the impact speeds are much lower, harder to get hurt in a 60 zone when the traffic is 50% or so under speed.
Yeah, so funny one. I had a chief executive of Vic Roads, and we were priming them up for the launch of one of the road safety strategies back in the day, and they were doing the media, and we were, chatting away, and we were standing there around the media huddle, and the chief executive is talking away and all this, and one of the journalists says, shouldn't Vic Roads be focusing on the horrific congestion? And it just happened that the media thing was outside an area that was actually congested at the time. So, shouldn't the focus be on that and the like? And the chief executive at the time said, we're here to talk about road safety, and congestion is road safety's friend. And all of us sort of in our hands and thought, well, that's true, but not the messages we want to be providing around road safety. And it really is an indication that we're trying to manage a road system that does move people and goods around, but does so to ensure with an assurance of their safety. So we do want to still be moving people around, but certainly in regional and remote areas, you've got a wicked combination of speed and then the usual lack of infrastructure due to the massive amount of road network you're dealing with and the costs associated with that. And then exactly as you say, the remoteness being the ability to get medical treatment quickly within that golden hour is very hard in a lot of our country and a lot of the jurisdiction that you're managing. So it's a real challenge.
Thank you, Ken. We've got 100% of people have voted in the poll. So that's great news because that means it's working and everyone's here. So I'm not sure if you can see that. Can you see that?
I can see it.
Okay, great.
And I assume everybody can see it. So which of the following is not a key principle of the SAFE system? As aim for no death or serious injury, aim for no mistakes on the road, people are vulnerable, people make mistakes, and shared responsibility. Well, we haven't gone through it in very minute detail. We've talked about the theories of those, and I haven't used quite exactly these words, but aim for no mistakes on the road is the one that we were looking for there, because we have acknowledged that we're not going to aim to try to re-engineer humans to never make mistakes or replace us with robots or the like. Well, maybe that's another area, but for pretty much all of our careers, we'll be still dealing with humans in control of the system. And what we want to do is manage mistakes, minimize and manage. That no mistakes is just not an aim of the SAFE system, because it's not real. We'd love no deaths or serious injuries, and in fact, that is an aspiration under the SAFE system, and we're aiming at that. We know the human tolerance physical force is a key principle. We know that people make mistakes, and we've got to factor that into our design, decision making, our operational decision making, and there is a shared responsibility which we're looking at. So then we go into Usain Bolt. Now I'm sure some of you are calculating this, going, oh, meters per second is 100 meters. About 10 seconds, and then, oh, how do I factor for acceleration? And then the fact that he was waving at the crowd when he crossed the finish line. It is 44 kilometers an hour, which most of you got. So well done. That's pretty good. But you might be thinking, why on earth is Ken asking about Usain Bolt in a SAFE system assessment course? Well, the reason I ask that is I like to do a little analogy. I like analogies. But I like to say, well, what about if we park a 2012 Toyota Camry at the end of Usain Bolt's lane, and he comes running along at 44 kilometers per hour and bash into that Toyota Camry, hits the bonnet, rolls up. Will he survive? Well, the answer is most likely yes, because Usain Bolt is the Hulk of a human, and he can withstand quite a bit of force there. If we planted a big gum tree at the end of his lane and he came running along at 44 kilometers per hour, and again, bang, into that gum tree, will he survive that? Again, yes. I mean, we're now talking harder forces because the car has got some cushiony areas. It's still pretty hard, but there's a little bit of cushioning there. In fact, what we have discovered is that there's this general correlation between maximum running speed and human tolerance to physical force. Your maximum running speed on flat ground is about equivalent to the maximum force that you can handle if you run into a solid object. So that could be our assignment one, couldn't it? Run as fast as you can at a tree and see if you survive, because we believe you most likely will. You'll need a bit of recovery time. You should lead a normal, healthy life. And there's a bit of science which has been done to sort of try to find that out. And well, there's a little bit of physics trickery within this, but don't get too caught up on that because it's a general correlation. But in this, we see the fatality probability. So this is the chance that anybody that is struck by a passenger vehicle will be killed at a certain collision speed. And this has been discovered off real world scenarios where crashes have happened, and they've analysed the speeds and the severity of the outcome, and discovered sort of what we're talking about. And you see there that, you know, around the 20 kilometers per hour or so, if the collision happens at that, not speed limit, don't get speed limit caught up in this. This is collision speed. It's highly likely that the pedestrian will survive. If this happens, you know, around 60 kilometers per hour, it's highly likely that the pedestrian will be killed. And around this 30 kilometer per hour mark, we see an exponential kick up in that speed. In that fatality probability. So it really quickly goes bad from about 30 kilometers per hour up. There's Usain Bolt, the Hulk of a human. You know, he's up there because this is our total population, and that's his running speed. So there's just a little bit of an indication of you know, pick any of us mere mortals up, and we'd be less likely to survive crashing at that 44 kilometers an hour the Usain Bolt would. There's a little video I've popped in there of the guy hitting the pommel horse. It's in your memory stick, and it's on Moodle, so you can have a look at that. He survives, but that's the kind of forces that we can handle. I'm going to jump on from that. We also have this data not just for those pedestrian crashes, but we have this information for some other crash types. So this one is a right angle crash. You know, common people would call it a T-bone crash. But we have this vehicle here is what we call the bullet vehicle. The one that does the striking is the bullet vehicle, does the damage. In this case, this is the target vehicle. The target vehicle is the one that gets struck, or the occupants that receive the damage. Now, this graph is the speed of the bullet vehicle and the injury or death probability to the occupant of the target vehicle. And we see there that around the 40 kilometers per hour, it's of bullet vehicle speed, it's very likely that the occupant will survive. Up around the 80 kilometers per hour, we're in the territory of highly likely to result in fatality to the occupant of the bullet of the target vehicle. Sorry, I should say. And around the 50 kilometers per hour is where it really starts to exponentially kick up. And then we see that for head-on crashes. And we have some data and information around head-on crashes. And they're both, in this case, the bullet vehicle and the target vehicle, as you would imagine. And we see there same weight, same speed of vehicle, that we're somewhere around the 60 to 70 is highly likely that the occupants will survive. Up there around 100, highly likely that they will be killed, or there will be fatality within this crash. Now, this is, if we take 70, which is where it really exponentially starts to kick up, this is 70 kilometers per hour for each vehicle. So a closing speed would be 140 kilometers per hour, but the actual force on the occupants of the vehicle is a 70 kilometer per hour crash. So it's the same as crashing into a brick wall at 70 kilometers per hour for the forces on the individual occupant of the vehicle, because basically they go from 70 kilometers an hour to 0. And it's all about the deceleration of the human, and that's where the damage happens to the human body in that fast deceleration. So some of you might be saying, "Oh no, but what about the force back on it and those sorts of things?" Well, instead of getting into that debate, there's a really good Mythbusters episode that crashes cars into each other at a speed and crashes them into a brick wall and uses some accelerometers and just proves this point. So I encourage you to watch that Mythbusters episode. In fact, Kathy, can we send around a link to that Mythbusters episode? Because I do enjoy people watching Mythbusters on work time and saying, "It's part of my training, part of my training."
We certainly can, Ken. A question come through, is the collision speed total of both participants or the speed of each?
So the collision speed, so in the head-on, it's just the speed of each. So there would be 70 and 70. And this one is the bullet vehicle speed only. So this vehicle could be coming out out of an intersection or something quite slowly, or could be going along quite fast, but it's that instantaneous hit. Now, there is some complex vectors associated with this, and it slightly varies few things a little bit. But in general, you know, that's what it is. So that's a good question, though. There are a couple of much more, I suppose, refined tools. So one of them is the kinetic energy management model. It's called XChemX, which can really go into minute detail. But I tell you now, that is far beyond what we would need to do for a safe system assessment. What I have done, though, is given you this sort of broad brush diagram to give you an indication of what sort of speeds we generally think are tolerable, or what the severity levels of different crashes at different speeds would come out at. Now, it is an indication only, right? And there is a lot of variables with this sort of stuff. But based on some of the research, things, if we have a 4 as the highest level of serious injury, death, serious injury, big stuff, and we have a 0, fairly sure you'll be walking away from these sorts of crashes. That's sort of how it graduates up. And in fact, we use these numbers in a scoring system within a safe system assessment. So you'll probably, I hope, be referring back to this and saying, I'm worried about a car side impacting with another car at 40 kilometers per hour. What sort of severity score should I give this? And you could say, well, side impact car to car, so come up here and somewhere. Okay, we're talking 3. So, not in the absolute end, and there will be some of them that will be survivable, but it's still, there's potential for some pretty serious stuff there. All right, I'm going to keep moving on, Kathy. But good, thank you for these questions. It's really great, and getting involved in these different different things that are coming up. This is a diagram that is a little bit the bane of my existence in road safety. I spend in my 24/7 working in road safety, and a lot of people bring this diagram up for me, which is to say that it's done as a crash causation study, which says, what is the cause of crashes on our road network? And the crash causation study that's been done, these are done, it's almost like clockwork. Every 10 years, there's a new crash causation study done around the world that's the world's biggest crash causation study. So they're taking, 5,000, 10,000 crashes and analyzing them, and they go, this is the cause of these crashes. And they pretty much always come back with somewhere in the order of around 90% of the cause of crashes is the road user error, driver error, pedestrian error, motorcyclist error, driver, road user error. Then we've got the roads playing a role in interacting with that sometimes, or the road being the actual feature that's been the major cause of this crash, vehicles even smaller than that. Now, the reason this is the bane of my existence is not because it's wrong. I don't dispute any of this research. I think it's very sound research and well done and comprehensive and massive studies. The issue I have with it is where people take this information, and it reinforces to people that we should be fixing the road user. And they say, well, 90% of the problem is the driver in this diagram. 90% of the driver, we got to fix that driver. That's where, that's where the problem is. But the reality is that we keep working on that, and it always comes back at this 90% or so. So what we actually need to do is start to acknowledge this and say we need to design our system and manage our system and operate our system completely differently, because that's always going to be the case. We might work really hard and get it down to, 88% of crash causation is human error. And that would be a massive achievement. Well, I'm probably being a little harsh here, because we have seen some pretty good advances in some areas. Yeah, but the reality is we need to think about this very differently. And so each time I see that come up, I'm like, okay, fair enough to put it up, but you need to complement it with this and say, every one of these is a system error, and it's our responsibility to redesign the system to take into account that human error. Now, this is a diagram that Ostrode's produced. This one's out of this study, which big crash causation study. Now, Ostrode's at this point put this driver excess and driver inexperience of these ones outside the system. I'm not too comfortable with that. I'd like to see the system just encapsulate that. This was done based on a big study out of the Centre for Automotive Safety Research in the University of Adelaide, and it's a big, juicy, chunky Ostrode's report. Should you want to read it, it's titled "Catering for Human Error in the Transport System." And one of the really interesting things, though, that was in there, and it was an analysis of the levels of highly inappropriate behaviour that result in death or serious injury, as compared to what they classified as general acceptable human error, I suppose they said it. So it wasn't. So I can't remember exactly where they drew the line, but sort of 180 down the wrong carriageway of a freeway was deemed in this driver excess category. But falling asleep at the wheel or using your mobile phone at the wheel was squarely in the what humans do. There's so much of it happening out there that it's sort of human behaviour. Anyway, the media loves to jump onto the idea that all road trauma out there are the ice addicts going 180 through residential areas or down the wrong carriageway of the freeway, or a stolen vehicle, those sorts of things. Those are a considerable amount of our road trauma, but they are actually not the dominant amount of our road trauma in Australia. So what we see is that if you take the highest end fatalities in terms of the severity of crashes, those are presenting about 40%, the absolute extreme stuff. The majority, the 60%, are people going generally about their business, generally doing some things that are just sort of almost human, and we don't condone a lot of the stuff, but it's so much what's happening out there. And then if you actually go to serious injuries, it even drops down a little bit more. So there's even less involved in those highly excessive, inappropriate things, somewhere around the 30-something, 35 or the like percent of that. So the bulk of our trauma isn't that. There's a lot of media around it. It's very graphic and it makes a very good news story, and that's why it's presented there. But be aware that the management of our system is, I think we need to address those with other elements of the system as well. The vehicles need to start taking over some of this stuff. We need we do continue to need to do the enforcement and regimes, and then it's a bigger picture societal problem, and a lot of the formative leaders in this sort of space and understanding this say, well, actually people drive like they live, and so if you have these challenges in society, that's how they drive, that's how they live their life in terms of the way they operate. So it's far bigger than just roads, but the roads are where the speeds and the energies are such that it can result in death or serious injury. So huge challenges, and going to take input from not just us road engineers, but very much a society response to this. And just here, out of that report and some other, behavioural psychologists will tell you all about this in excruciating detail, but humans don't just make these deliberate violations on the road network, which is the far end, which gets all the attention. But we have slips, lapses, mistakes, unintentional violations, all happening all the time out there on the road network by people just like yourselves and others. And the lightnings can strike anywhere in terms of these mistakes. So there is a degree of randomness in terms of which one of those results in death and serious injury. And it's just, wrong place. I was going to say wrong place, wrong time, but I think you have to say wrong place, right time, because if it's wrong place, wrong time, then you wouldn't have an incident. I don't know. So a little trickery of the English language, I think. All right, enough out of me, Kathy. Let's do a little exercise.
Yes, please, Ken. We've got about 40 minutes to go.
All right, so what you're going to do here is, if the poll should be popping up on your screen, what we're doing is a mix and match here. So basically, we're saying the traditional way of thinking about the SAFE system was victim blaming. And what we're trying to move to is one of these other ones. Now, I'll tell you now, some of them could go to any one of these. But if you maybe scroll down through some of the questions, you'll get you'll be able to get a few quickly and answer the others. But what we're doing is looking, how have we traditionally approached road safety, and where are we moving to with this idea of the SAFE system? What are we trying to achieve? Not to say we're there yet. We've got a lot of work to do, and it's going to take big change. Now, for those who can't see it or you want to see it visually, it's on your screen in the PowerPoint, so you should be able to see there, and you can draw a line or put a number there. So if you're having problems with the poll, you can just type in some numbers. But I think everybody should be good there. Let's give them, 3 minutes on that, Kathy?
3 minutes sounds good. And a stretch when you're done?
Yeah, have a stretch and get a water, and we'll get back into it. I'm going to stand up and have a stretch. Turn my camera off.
I thought you might lead us in the stretching, Ken.
I do have the Murphy's moustache to do it. Again, you're not being marked on this, so feel free to just have a guess and not get too concerned with it.
Ken, we might get you back there if you finished your stretching. We've got a question come through, and almost everyone has answered the poll as well. So the question is there any difference in severity when a vehicle hits a stationary wall or hits a wall moving towards the vehicle? I'm not sure about a wall moving towards the vehicle. I guess, is there a difference in severity if you hit something stationary or if you've hit another moving object?
Oh, it's a good question, and again, I refer you to the Mythbusters episode for a bit more detail. But the principles is dependent on whether the wall has a mass that moves you back in that crash. You know, in theory, if you're in a tiny little smart car and you hit a road train, you know, you're both going the same speed. It's about the mass then, and the road train pushes you back. So you actually then take the force of the road train. But in the example that I was doing with the head-on, it was same mass, vehicle speed. So they actually come to a halt there, which is the same as the brick wall. So the mass is the key element to that. So yeah. But back to Mythbusters, or you suppose you could dig out your old Year 11 physics books if you really wanted to. Year 12 physics, maybe, I can't remember.
Follow-up question to that, back to the graph. Is it reading correctly that the T-bone accident is more severe than a head-on at the same speed?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So the reasoning behind that is actually associated with the vehicle safety features. I mean, crumple zones, airbags, seat belts, all for that frontal crash. In fact, cars are well designed or generally well designed for a frontal impact, not well designed for side impact. Yeah, we're getting a little bit better with side curtain airbags and those sorts of things, but really it's a very long way away from being able to withstand some expected crash speeds. Okay, so thank you for that. I'm actually going to stop sharing that, Kathy. I've pressed stop on that, and I'm going to show it on the screen because it's a bit easier to talk to. And we'll go to here. So as I said, a few of these could go to different areas. I took this one straight out of the Austroads, one of the Austroads documents, but I acknowledge it could have gone to a few areas. But you know, we're trying to go away from that victim blaming and start to recognize human error as part of being human, and try to minimize its consequence and having that shared responsibility. There has been a big emphasis on road user education and compliance. We're not going to ignore that, but there's much greater now emphasis on creating that forgiving system. Focus on crash reduction is now a focus on enhanced focus on consequence, especially severe injury minimization. So we're not really looking to eliminate all crashes. We'd love that, but you know, the mistakes are going to happen. So how do we manage the energy? 4 pillars or 4 elements. Action independently as silos. No, we're trying to jointly use those as an interaction. And that mobility safety balance, and I can't even tell you how many letters I've written back to the public, or written for the minister to write back to the public about speed zones or the like, being a balance between safety and mobility and the like. Well, that traditional way of thinking and writing and the language we're using, we're trying to say to maximize safe mobility. So go as fast as we can, as long as it's safe. Anyway, just a little bit of reinforcement there of the thinking. And there's a good quote here from Ian Cameron, which I'll let you read in your own time when you actually, I think there's a couple of really good things in there. I'm going to jump on. Okay, I'm going to do this quick little exercise with you, and then I'll probably fly through the last few slides just to cover off a few things. But this is the Melba Highway in Victoria, and it was back, a few years back, the first central barrier system in a flushed narrow median, and you can see it there. And here's a little bit more of it. You can see a little bit of 2+1 scenario, so 2 lanes in one direction, 1 in the other, and then it sort of swaps over for that overtaking opportunity. So without knowing anything about this road and its development, first, of its kind and all these challenges, what I want you to type in a few challenges into the comments that you believe were major blockers to the implementation of this treatment, the central median flush medium as it's presented there. So, a lot of you have been involved in development planning, design of road upgrades, and you know some of the challenges. And what do you think this one would certainly bring up as major challenges? So just type it in, a couple of words, and in fact, I will randomly pick 1 or 2, and if you match mine, you can have a prize. And I'm not saying these are the biggest challenges that we're faced in this job, but certainly a couple of couple of them that came up. So
I'm assuming you can see these now, Ken?
Yeah, I'm back. I think, yeah, I can. Oh, gee, they're coming in thick and fast. I'm tipping this group's had some challenges in their careers. Absolutely. Yeah, okay. So I'll let Kathy, you go back and find who said these things first. But gee, okay, we're getting a lot here. So we've got traffic management. We've got the width of the cut, cutting width through the hill. Deflection of the wire rope was one that I had popped down, which I found bizarre, but that is GS Krona. It's a username, so that's going to be hard for me to work out. Kathy, that's on you to find out. Carriageway width, yes. So maintenance and taking out the ability to do some of the maintenance, installation cost and maintenance cost, volumes, head-on. Roadside access is another one. So Craig can have a prize on that. I had that one down as one of my 3. Not to say that any of the others weren't things that were absolutely brought up. Yeah, there's a few others that are talking about the deflection zone and the like. Batters, sight distance for overtaking. Now that is a great one. Not one of the ones I wrote down, but absolutely stopping sight distance and barriers in the centre on curves, and we can talk through a bit of that. There we go. Motorcyclists came in there, and we've got another username, I'll let you work that out, Kathy.
Hendrick, I've got it. It's all good.
Good, Hendrick. I popped down motorcyclists as well. A few others got motorcyclists, but after Hendrick. So emergency services access came into it. All right. As I said, wow, this group has come up to some challenges in their projects, obviously, because all of those things, everything that was said there came up. Some of them caused delays for many, many months. Some of them were even longer than that. Some of them were actually rectified quite easily. But I'm not going to go through each of those in detail. The one that I did want to mention was, or a few that I found really interesting, was the deflection of the system into the oncoming lane. So those of you who know a wire rope system and how it operates, a vehicle hits the wire rope and the wire rope posts break away, and the wire ropes absorb the energy and bring the vehicle back. And we know that there's a deflection zone behind those, and we make sure we've accounted for that within the design of the barrier system. Now this one, in order, as you can see, in a cutting, some challenges there in terms of widths and how this all plays out. And the median width there varied, went down to a 1.4 at some spots, and It's 2 metre or 2.2 at a lot of other spots. But nonetheless, certainly we know the wire rope would deflect into that oncoming lane a bit. Now, that then, I reckon it added at least a year, if not more, to this project as the design committees debated this. I said, well, you know, it doesn't meet the requirements, and people were very adamant, you know, standards say this, must be this, we don't have the deflection zone, can't do it. And then a lot of us in there going, well, you know, our options here is to blast out or cut this batter back or compromise other areas. And there's a sort of quite a risk analysis done and all sorts of things. But what happened, you know, is there that people couldn't see that the barrier system, even operating a little bit less, like deflecting a little bit into that lane, is so much better than just a white line, which is currently what was there. And that we should be, you know, trying to eliminate as much of the risk as we possibly can. And it was, the reason I bring it up is this sort of reverting back to a standard without stepping back and looking at the overall safety of this. Now, this became a real interesting debating point of personal risk accountability. And you know, Queenslanders often go, oh no, we've got, you know, Wivenhoe Dam and personal accountability, and I'll be jailed if I make decisions like this outside of a documented standard or guideline. Well, I suggest you get some legal advice on that from your legal departments within TMR, because most of the jurisdictions that have got that legal advice, and New South Wales did a really good one, and Victoria's done a bit of work on that, say, yeah, if you can get a safer outcome and you don't do that, you'll also be held accountable personally. Well, in most cases, it'll be the organisation that's held to account. If you knowingly have an outcome that gives safer options to the community and you don't activate that because of a standard or guideline, that is unacceptable. It's pretty in your face, really, isn't it? But it does reinforce that you need to stand back and look at these. So that's one. But the other reason I bring this up is because of the huge raft of reasons why people say we can't do stuff on the road network. The list was the length of my arm there. In what, a minute? There were already that many reasons why we couldn't do this job, and we will get these in every time we try to do something even slightly different on the road network. But we have a responsibility to work through those, give them the legitimate give them the legitimate attention they deserve, because these are concerns from road users or from those trying to maintain the road. But don't lose sight of that overarching objective. And when this job finally actually got in and in place, the death and serious injury on that road has virtually eliminated. There's still been some incidents leaving the road in some bits that didn't get barrier, but the savings to the community have just been astronomical, and we got caught up in years and years of debates and challenges on things that, in the scheme of things, were minor. You know, I try to make it very black and white in these training courses, and I acknowledge that it's a very murky grey that we work in, but my job is to try to have that clarity. Anyway, that went in finally, and it got hit. Of course it got hit. That was one of the reasons actually why people didn't want it to go in, because they were like, it's going to get hit and then we're going to have to maintain it. Of course it's going to get hit. That's why we put it in. And it got hit, and then there was a call to the region. And as many of you know, when you're getting the call from the public about an incident, you think, here we go, this is not going to be good. Actually, in one of these cases, they just calling to say, oh, I've been driving that road for a long time, and I just wanted to talk to whoever put that barrier system in, because I think it saved my life, because the car basically came directly at me, and if the barrier wasn't there, they would have hit me full speed. And anyway, they managed to grab that person and film them. And there's a wonderful little 3-minute video in your memory stick and on Moodle that I really encourage you to watch, because it just shows what we're trying to achieve. And the fact that the barrier, somebody fell asleep, right? And they're not a bad person. They fell asleep. They made a bad choice to drive. But the barrier didn't get, it just did its job and just made sure that no death or serious injury happened, and they had to get their car, to the panel beater, and everybody walked away. So it's a sort of celebration of the infrastructure. And that's really, to me, what safe system infrastructure is all about. Mistake, and then, everybody walks away.
Ken, just a couple of quick questions on this particular stretch of road. Do you know the frequency of crashes into the barrier?
Not immediately. We've been doing quite a bit of work with different media barrier treatments that are getting more and more hits. There was a different one, not this road, but we've been doing quite a bit of work analysing the strikes, and we see that the terminals are probably the most struck part. So any gaps that you have in the terminals, and we're not 100% sure why that is, whether people relax a little bit or they use the brake as the opportunity to readjust or check their phone or whatever it is, but the terminals are getting struck a little bit more than we would like. Yeah, it does get struck, and it gets struck with nuisance hits that probably would never have been involved in a head-on crash scenario. But that's kind of the price you pay to protect those other crashes that would have got through.
Do you know the length of highway upgraded with this barrier?
Yeah, so that one was about I think 7 kilometres. We've done about Stratford to Bairnsdale is about 50 or 60 kilometres, and then there's been a series of other ones, and we're just in Victoria rolling them out as much as we can, and compromising lane widths a little bit, and trying to do some other features. But we certainly see the value of this on roads with traffic volume sort of above the 4,000 AADT, which I know you're dealing with a lot of roads that don't have that. So yeah, some challenges there.
Was the speed limit lowered, maintained, or raised on this one?
Maintained. It stayed at default 100 km/h speed limit.
And I think we'll throw one more technical question at you. Concrete barrier compare with a wire rope barrier? How did that work out?
Yeah, so certainly you'd eliminate your deflection issues with a concrete barrier, an F-type or the like. The severity to the vehicle occupants would be much worse. So we get around a 40% reduction in fatal serious injuries with the implementation of a concrete barrier system, and we get about an 85% reduction with a wire rope safety barrier system. The reason for that is that when you hit so people are probably have this vision of people crashing with the barrier systems as this drift off, and they hit it at a nice shallow angle. The mechanics of a crash are actually really far more, well, a lot of crashes are a lot worse than that. There are some that do that. A lot of crashes are people leaving the road to the left, overcorrecting, and shooting at a pretty harsh angle at the barrier. So the flexibility of that barrier system becomes integral to the severity outcome to the occupants of the vehicle. And hitting a concrete barrier, then the severity is much worse. The cost would be more as well, probably, for the concrete system, but you would avoid some of those other challenges. But good point, and there are situations where you would use concrete, absolutely.
Okay, I like one last question. Did the operating speed change?
That's a good question. I would have to relook at that. I would imagine it did. It came down a little bit. It has in other circumstances where you put something within that narrows, that closes that envelope of a road, narrows it down. You traditionally see a lowering in operating speed, but I can't hand on heart for this road say that actually occurred. But yeah, no, they're great questions, Kathy. It sounds like a lot of these people would benefit from doing the barrier course that we offer specifically, but we'll continue on with this one. This is just a diagram to show that there are many layers to our system. This is a Swiss cheese model that says, you can intervene to stop a crash happening or the severity of that crash through any slices of this Swiss cheese. And the idea is that in order for a crash to happen of a magnitude of severity that is death or serious injury, it needs to find a hole in each of these slices of Swiss cheese. And if we can remove the holes or make them smaller, that's good, and we have that redundancy in the system. All right, I'm gonna go a bit fast here, so put your seatbelts on. I'm gonna just cover off a few things in safer road users, safer vehicles, and safer speeds. Speed's something that's going to be continuing on throughout the whole, all of our modules. Road users and vehicles, really, we don't have a huge amount to discuss after today's module. But the reason I want to do that is twofold. One being that as road safety practitioners or people even just managing a road network or being involved in that should have an understanding of some of those other behavioural aspects to, when you're at the barbecue and you're talking to people and they find out you work for road authority and they're, talking about different things, you can dispel a few myths. But also within a safe system assessment, if you're doing full safe system assessments, you are not just looking at the speeds and the infrastructure. You're also looking further and broader than that and associated with things to do with behaviour change interventions and vehicle safety interventions and those sorts of things. We'll get into that later. But I want to talk briefly about some of the things we know work. So education, encouragement, enforcement, and the licensing systems and different licensing systems we put in place. So graduated licensing system is generally the way we talk about it. We know that education plays a foundational role in how people operate around the road system, and it can provide value. So I say it's very hard to change humans. It is. It can take generations often, but it also takes lifetimes. But we do know that of course, kids are the most open to behaviour change education or the way that they operate. They're also very good conduits to getting to the parents in terms of some road safety behaviours like using seatbelts or the like. They'll tell their parents to put their seatbelt on. Basically, if youth can instill that that's an important thing to do in the car. Young drivers, particularly vulnerable, just happens that we're licensing people right around the time that they are able to start legally drinking and are very active socially often, and there's a lot of huge challenges there. They are our highest risk road user, and we need to really continue to work on that. 3 quick tips that I have: swap cars with a young driver. Because inevitably the parents are driving the safest cars and the young drivers are in a bomb, and the risk profile is completely the opposite. The other one is don't send them on an advanced driver training course. They're far more likely to come out of that and be killed or seriously injured than before they went in. The increased skills that they learn are far and away swamped by the increased risk-taking and confidence that they have. So they take more risks. And worldwide, one of the best research things ever. Anything that involves high speeds or skidding or advanced braking techniques significantly increases the risk of the participant of that course. The other one is just to give them the full hours with a supervising driver. As many hours as possible with a supervising driver on the public road network is the proven way to significantly reduce their risk. The other thing in behaviour space, and this is a sort of a general one, is not to target the individual driver for their risk. So take this one, for example. If we were to target this guy and say, don't use your mobile phone when you drive because it increases your risk of being involved in a fatal or serious injury crash. Doesn't resonate because this person, humans have a optimism bias, so people don't actually believe that they will be involved in something like that. Most of them, there's a few segments of society who are completely the opposite and believe they'll be involved in everything like that, but they're very rare. The second one is that this is actually an extremely low risk activity. for the individual. So an individual using their phone is very, very low risk. But we operate a road network with everybody. So what we need to do is add up all those very low risks. And as a cumulative, as a society risk, it's actually very big. But what we end up doing is coming up with these campaigns and advertisements where we talk to an individual as though they are a collective. And we say, don't do that. That's a very risky activity. And they're like, I've been doing it for the last 10 years. And I've never crashed and I'm safe. And they just switch off. But if you tell this person, hey, if you text while you're driving, your kids are going to text when they drive. Then they stop texting and driving, at least when the kids are in the car. But that is a far more resonating thing. And that applies across the board with our road safety and infrastructure or speed limits or the like. You don't tell people we're reducing the speed limit for your safety, because they will come back and say, that is crap. You are not. You're doing it for revenue raising and blah, blah, blah. Say, we're trying to protect, the young drivers and these people. And the one I always say is, listen, everybody's not as good a driver as you. And we need to protect everybody. And we've all got to compromise a little bit. And, sorry, but that's what it is. And they're annoyed, but they're like, I understand there's idiots out there. And all of a sudden, we've got a bit more resonation than them thinking it's about them. So we know whole school approaches work. We know education combined with other partner activities work, and support for community education. The graduated licensing systems where we introduce people into the system slowly is good, and targeting parents and the like is really good. Fear tactics don't tend to work very well to get actual behaviour change, nor skill-based driver training or one-off events. Driver simulators don't give us much value, and go-karting clubs and racing clubs and things don't either, nor information-only approaches. I've put a lot of literature in your memory stick if you're interested in this. Learner drivers generally pretty safe. As soon as they're out there driving by themselves, the risk goes off the charts and it comes down over time, but never actually gets back to as safe as a learner driver, which shows your skills aren't a major. I mean, they are a little bit of a factor, but not a major factor. If we can incentivize people to drive safely, it seems to have some resonation. So pay them to drive safely, in a sense, give them a free license that they have no demerit points after 10 years or something. Advertising a particular behaviour is far better than just saying drive safely. Tell them to rest every 2 hours or something, rather than fatigue kills, drive safely. Given the action, and changing a culture is what we're trying to do, which I'll talk a lot more about. I'm going to jump through these, Kathy, because I need to get to a few things at the end. Enforcement's still a really important part of road safety, but it just is a platform, not what we're really building off. It's strategic, specific, and general deterrence and visual presence. The speed cameras work, and they do a good job in getting things within some limits that we've obviously set. And the vehicle technology is really accelerating well now, where your vehicles can regulate things like alcohol in the system and not let the car go, or regulate speed, or tell you what speed zone you're in and not let you go over that speed. They're all, the technology's there. Do we have the political will to enforce these on people? Often not. The vehicles are getting better and they will eventually take over, but it's a long way off. But we see ANCAP is a great feature that's showed us some vehicle. There is a desire for safety features, or you can instill that, and so we see that. Unfortunately, even the ANCAP crash testing speeds are nowhere near what we're travelling around. 64 kilometre per hour for the frontal offset crash to pass. So if the occupant, the dummy doesn't withstand a made 3 serious injury, then it's a pass. It's only done at 64 kilometres per hour. Side impact pole test is only done at 32 kilometres per hour. So we're so far off in terms of what the vehicles can handle. Pedestrians, I can't even remember what pedestrian crash speed is, but I have to recheck that. But we're a long way off from the automated vehicle that doesn't have a steering wheel and drives itself in terms of enough of the fleet doing that. 30 years or so, 40 years before we could even start to see a high proportion of the fleet with this sort of stuff, maybe even 50 years. I'm going to jump through a bit of that and just briefly talk about speeds. Speed is like one of the critical elements of the safe system. A few reasons why. This is reaction time in the green and braking distance in the red. It is not a linear relationship, right? You can see there at 60 kilometers per hour, you're traveling along, you react, you hit the brakes, you just touch an object at 45 meters. Do it 10 kilometers higher, 70, react. You hit it at 46 kilometers per hour. You only went up 10 kilometers an hour. It's not linear. And in fact, we know that it's a fourth power relationship for fatal crashes and speed changes, and it's a third power relationship for serious injury and speed changes. So small changes in speed actually play out as really big impacts on the amount of death or serious injury. And the higher the severity, the more it's influenced by speed. The public, not so convinced, and we need to work on that. And I'll let you look back at some of this sort of stuff. The public a lot of the public out there don't believe that speed is the major player in road safety, and that it's all the driver behavior stuff that needs to be worked on. This is a diagram I've put into the Austra's Guide to Speed Limits and Speed Management, which is coming up. But the Swedes basically filter everything through speed, because you can achieve a safe system based with whatever your infrastructure is, whatever your vehicle is, and whatever your people are, based on if you can get them to travel at a speed. But we need to operate that transport network still. So we need to be able to, balance these things out in terms of how do we get that level of safety, but also still have that speed. And we get safe speed through infrastructure and or speed limits. Don't get focused just on that speed limit, but we've got infrastructure to play with and the vehicles and other things. Explaining why a speed limit is in place can assist. So it's, whether it's a school or telling them that there's no emergency stopping lane is actually helps in the acceptance and compliance. And protection of vulnerable road users is generally well accepted. I'll talk you through a couple of other things later on speed. But in the safe system, risk generally has been likelihood times consequence. What is the chance that a crash is going to happen? And how bad is it going to be? For the safe system and a safe system assessment, we add exposure. How many vehicles are exposed to that crash? How many pedestrians are exposed to that? What's the chance that that crash is going to happen? And then how bad is it going to be when it does happen? And what you do in a safe system is analyze each of these elements, and you quantify them and you score them. And so exposure can be things like blocking off roads, not letting people access areas like this one. They're not letting them access a level crossing there, or separating completely. So the vulnerable road users are not on the road, they're completely separated. Then the exposure to vehicle crashes has been eliminated. The likelihood is what we've covered traditionally in road safety: sealed shoulders, line marking, audio tactile, signs, traffic signals. All those things are trying to stop crashes happening. And they're great. That is so important, and we're going to continue to do it, right? Traffic signals, great example. Let's try and stop those crashes happening. But they do nothing for the severity of the crashes when somebody runs the red light, completely misses it. Or this one, wide center line on the Bruce Highway, fall asleep, hit the audio tactile, have a little bit of room to come back. Great, stopping crashes, absolutely. But the one that goes over, doing nothing for the severity. Severity is all about, and this, reducing the speed, the angle, deflecting energy, and managing energy. So slowing people at intersections at the conflict point, providing barriers so they can run along that barrier, dissipate energy over time, is really what we're talking about. Now, I've raced at the end there, but I'll just give you this last thing. I've been, road safety auditing for 20 years or something like that, and safe system assessing only for the last 5 or 6 years, really. The biggest difference to me is that I used to look around the road network all the time as I was driving, walking, or doing audits or anything like that. And I would have this vision of how what is influencing a crash to happen? Or there's a see-through effect, or the sight distance is blocked there, or all of these things. Now I still do that, but I'm more and more dominated by what is the potential energy here. So I'm thinking, what are the speeds? What are the angles? What are the barrier systems? What is the energy sitting in this bit of road or this intersection when mistakes happen? Not if, when. And that is a critical element of the safe system that we have never really put our attention to. And that's what we're going to be taking you through a lot next week. So we're in the space of energy management these days. All right, Kathy, it's 12 o'clock.
Yes, you did race through there at the end, so thank you. Next, when Ken says next week, he means Thursday. So we'll catch up again this Thursday for the next session. And I'll just send everyone a quick email. I've loaded that Mythbusters episode into Moodle, and I'll also direct you to where the first quiz is, just a 10-question multiple choice quiz in there to do between today and Thursday. That's all, I think.
If you have trouble with it, contact myself or Kathy. If you've got technical questions, talk to me. Shoot me an email. Happy to have a chat. Otherwise, we'll see you on Thursday. See you Thursday.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.